On November 26, 1930, on the front page of the Medin Daily Journal newspaper in Kanadi, a news article was published with the title, "Village of the Dead." This news caused a wave of fear across Canada because a whole tribe in northern Canada had disappeared overnight without leaving a trace. In a remote area of northern Canada, there is a place called Anjikuni Lake. By the shores of this lake, there was a small settlement where a tribe known as the Eskimos lived. This tribe consisted of about 100 to 150 people who sustained themselves by fishing from this lake. This area in northern Canada spans thousands, not just thousands, but millions of square kilometers, and has only a few thousand inhabitants. This is because of the extreme weather conditions here. At Anjikuni Lake, apart from fishing, other animals are also hunted in the surrounding areas. For this reason, many hunters often visit here. It was a freezing cold day in November 1930 when a hunter named Joe Labelle came to this area for hunting. He was so engrossed in hunting that he didn't realize when it got dark. He had an idea in mind to stay the night. At the Eskimo village by the shores of Anjikuni Lake, as he had done before, the people of this tribe were famous for warmly welcoming outsiders. So, Joe Labelle packed his belongings and started heading toward the Eskimo village. It was a moonlit night, but absolute silence surrounded him. Neither could he see anyone around, nor hear anyone's voice. The only sound he could hear was of his own footstep. Although he had done this before, tonight felt a bit different. He expected to hear the barking of dogs, owned by the villagers, but today, even as he approached the settlements, there was only silence and desolation. Feeling uneasy, Joe increased his walking pace, thinking that perhaps the villagers were either asleep or had gone somewhere. From a distance, he could see the chimneys of the houses, with smoke rising from them, indicating that someone was inside. But even as he got closer, he couldn't hear any voices. Finally, when Joe entered the village, he was shocked to see that there were no humans or animals in sight. But what puzzled Joe even more was that smoke was still rising from the chimneys of some homes, as if someone was present inside. He randomly entered one tent, but no one was there. The same was true for all the other tents. Perhaps Joe would have ignored all this and left the place. But one thing disturbed him even more. Some homes had cooking pots on the stoves, but the food inside them had burned. This indicated that someone had prepared food for the night, but they hadn't eaten it. Even the women of the village, who used to sew clothes, had left unfinished clothes with needles still threaded. It appeared as if the villagers had left abruptly, but the question remained, where did they go? Joe Labelle began to search the entire village. He found that the dogs owned by the villagers were tied up with ropes but had starved to death. Even though there was food placed before them, there was no one to feed them. At one spot, he saw a freshly dug grave, which seemed to have been dug not too long ago. Seeing all this, Joe Labelle became even more disturbed and frightened. He had witnessed something so strange that his fear had escalated by the minute. The villagers, whenever they left, always took their dogs with them. But what he saw suggested that something extremely unusual had occurred, forcing the people to leave so suddenly that they couldn't even take their dogs or extinguish the fire. Unable to bear the eerie atmosphere any longer, Joe Labelle hurried to the nearest telegraph office. From there, he contacted the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, RCMP, and described what he had witnessed. When the police arrived at the village, they confirmed everything Joe had reported. The police suspected that perhaps someone had attacked the village and killed everyone. But if that were the case, there would have been bloodstains or some signs of a struggle. Even if there was no blood, at least some belongings would have been scattered around. The police immediately launched a search operation to find the missing villagers. During this operation, they discovered something unusual that even Joe Labelle hadn't noticed. The entire village was covered in snow. But there were no footprints anywhere. The only footprints visible were those of Joe Labelle himself. This meant that, apart from Joe, no one had entered or left the village. If the villagers didn't walk away, and no one else had come, then where did the villagers go? The lake was frozen over. And the villagers' boats were parked on the shore. In this season, fishing was not possible, so their boats were pulled ashore. If the villagers had swum across the lake, or had been killed and thrown into it, there would have been breaks or cracks in the ice covering the lake. The police investigation also revealed that the villagers had disappeared several days before Joe's arrival, because the dogs wouldn't have died after just a day or two of hunger. The smoke from the chimneys also indicated that it hadn't been too long since they left. As the smoke continued to rise even after the fires were extinguished, the police were left with countless questions, but not a single answer. After months of searching, the police finally labeled the case as unsolved and closed it forever. Over time, people forgot about the incident. 50 years later, in 1984, writers Roger Bohr and Nigel Blundell published an article connecting this incident to extraterrestrial activity. In their article, they stated that when they visited the area near Anjikuni Lake, they met a hunter and his two sons. The hunter told them that he often saw flying objects with strange shapes hovering over the lake. These objects always moved toward the Eskimo village. Using this story, the writer suggested that perhaps extraterrestrials landed in the village that night and took all the villagers with them. However, these writers had no concrete evidence to prove the existence of aliens or their attack. As a result, most people dismissed their theory. Following this, many other theories emerged about the disappearance of the Eskimo tribe. But none could provide definitive answers. To this day, after nearly 100 years, no one knows what happened to the villagers of Anjikuni Lake. The case of the missing Eskimo tribe remains an unsolved mystery. We hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, share, and leave your heartfelt comments. See you in our next exciting video.